What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I told you all very clearly that as soon as we had the rules for Star Wars Unlimited, I would bring you the rules for Star Wars Unlimited. And now we do have the rules for Star Wars Unlimited, so it would frankly be a little bit rude if I did not bring them to you. Good. So starting off then, in terms of building a deck, you need one leader and you need one base. Now, the aspect icons we'll get to in a second, but they are actually very important. You then need at least 50 cards. Now, it does say at least 50 on the quick start rules, and we don't have the full rules yet. We've got the quick start rules, that'll do for now. It says at least 50. It does not give us a maximum number of cards, so for now, we assume that there is no maximum. It's as many as you like. You can only have 3 copies of each card. However, you can only have 1 copy of each card where it is unique. So take Grand Moff Tarkin as an example. This little star thing to the left of his name, that shows that he is a unique character, basically a named character. And that means you can only have 1 in play at the same time. But you can have more than 1 in your deck. But if you play another one, then the first one is instantly defeated. You can only have 1 at a time. It does say in the rules specifically under your control, so that means that if your opponent's got Grand Moff Tarkin, you can still play Grand Moff Tarkin, but if you play a second one, you have to defeat the first one. Now, aspects are very, very important. There are a bunch of different aspects that are present in the game. You can see them on the screen here. They are vigilance, command, aggression, cunning, heroism, and villainy. Now, this is very, very important because when you have your leader, you will have 2 of those aspects. And then when you have your base, you will have 1 more aspect. So let's say, for argument's sake, that we've got ourselves Luke Skywalker. We are going to have ourselves vigilance, and we're going to have heroism. And then let's say, for argument's sake, we are going to go Dagobah Swamp as our base of choice here. We get ourselves a second vigilance. If we want to play any cards that need more aspects than that, we have to pay 2 additional resources. Now, you might be wondering, well, hang on a second, why would you go for a base that's got vigilance when you've got a leader with vigilance? There might be cards that need 2 vigilance in order to actually play them. So an example here, if we go back to Grand Moff Tarkin, there are clearly 2 aspects shown here, and that is command and villainy. That would be an extra 4 resources. Don't play Grand Moff Tarkin in this deck. That doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen. That's a terrible, 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 terrible idea. But you may, for instance, want to go for Cloud City Wingguard, that of course has vigilance, and you would be able to play normally. This is referred to as the aspect penalty. General rule, unless you've got a very good reason, stick to aspects that are on your leader and your base. Don't go outside of that unless you've got a very good reason, and we all know that at some point people are going to make very good decks that do have a very good reason to go away from that. Now, in terms of actually playing the game, how do you win? You reduce the base from 30 to 0. And it says specifically 30 to 0. All of them are going to have 30. You need to do 30 damage to the base. Now, in terms of when you're actually setting up the game here, what you need to do is put your base in play opposite your opponent, put your leader in play below your base, and then randomly determine which player starts the game with the initiative. Initiative means that you take the first action every round. You take it in turns, but you get the first one. And then you set aside everything else. Shuffle your deck, draw 6 cards. You can take 1 optional mulligan by shuffling your entire hand and drawing a new hand of 6, but you need to keep the new hand. So you get 1 optional mulligan, but no second. You then choose 2 cards from your hand and put them face down near your base. They are your resources, which you use to pay for the cards that you play during the game. We've seen this in a bunch of other games. This makes perfect sense. And then when you're set up, it should look roughly a little something like this. This is roughly what we're going for here. This is, this is the goal. And you can see there that you've got your base, your leader, your resources, your hand, your deck, the initiative counter, damage counters, and an epic action counter. That's because it's once per game. We'll get to that more in a moment. So as we get into the gameplay then, basically, you've got the main action phase. Now this is the main part of the game, and what happens is you take it in turns. And you can play a card, attack with one unit, use an action ability, take the initiative, or pass. But you go, then your opponent goes, then you go, then your opponent goes, etc. Whoever has the initiative takes the first go. And you go back and forth until both players pass. When you pass twice in a row, you're good. As in you pass and your opponent passes, then you go on to, well, the next part of the game. It's the regroup phase, we'll get there in a minute. So basically, what you can do is you can play a card. Now, when you're playing a unit, this is very important, they come into play exhausted. Generally speaking, they have to be active in order to actually, or ready, in order to actually use their skills, attack, etc. So exhausted means you've got to wait a turn to use them. That makes perfect sense. And then when units come into play, they stay in play until they are defeated. So if we use Grand Moff Tarkin as an example here, you can see that you've got your cost and your aspects, your abilities, and then you've got power and HP. You will also notice it is a ground unit rather than a space, because remember in this game there are basically two arenas. You've got ground and space, ground attack ground units, space attack space units. Nice and simply. But that is really, really important to bear in mind. You're going to need a bit of a mix between the two. That is very important. Now, event cards, you just use them and whack them straight into your discard. They are, like in most games, they're one-shot deals. Use them, put them in your discard, make sure you pay appropriately, and remember the aspect. You've got to have the right aspect, or else you're going to have to pay 2 more resources, which generally just are not going to be worth it. And then we've got upgrades. Upgrades are, you attach them to a unit, they stay in play until the unit is defeated. Although I'm going to make a very bold prediction here that there are going to be cards that are able to remove upgrades. Because that happens in every single game that's got upgrades. I feel very confident that's going to be the case here. Now, when it comes down to attacking, like I've mentioned, you have to be ready. And you can only attack once per unit. You have to exhaust to attack. And you can only attack in the same arena, ground attacks ground, space attacks space. But you can also just directly attack the base. Couple of things to bear in mind, there are units with Sentinel, which stop you attacking other units or the base. You've got to go after the Sentinel, unless you've got Saboteur, which actually gets around Sentinel. If you've got Restore, you heal a certain amount of damage from the base, whatever your Restore value is. And then this is obviously where you use the on-attack abilities. Now, in terms of damage, it's quite simple. If you attack the base, you do as much damage to the base as your attack. That makes perfect sense, right? Whatever your power is, that's what you do. And it is called power, not attack. That one makes perfect sense. When units attack each other, they do simultaneous damage. So the example on the screen here, you've got Consular Security Force, which has got power of 3, HP of 7, and it's attacking into Death Star Stormtrooper that's got power of 3, HP of 1. So they would each do 3 damage. The difference is Death Star Stormtrooper gets defeated because it's only got 1 HP, whereas Consular Security Force with 7 HP stays around with 4 HP remaining. You do not heal the damage between rounds or anything like that. The damage stays on so you can build up damage and attacks over time. In terms of using action abilities, it's just whatever it says on the card. So if we use, as an example, the undeployed leader Luke Skywalker, you pay 1, tap it, and give a shield token to a unit with a particular aspect that you played this phase. Makes perfect sense to me, ladies and gentlemen. You've got the cost, you've got the arrow, which obviously means tap, or exhaust, and then that's it. Anything else you have to do, it will say you can do this. Now, in terms of taking the initiative, remember I've said that the initiative is basically what means that you get the first go every round. As your action during the action phase, you can take the initiative, but it is your last action of the round. Once you take the initiative, you pass every other turn. Essentially, instead of taking it in turns, your opponent does something and you pass, they do something and you pass, and it keeps going until your opponent passes. This I absolutely adore, because there are going to be mind games here. When do you take the initiative? And when do you leave it too late and then your opponent takes it and then you get sad because they've already taken the initiative? Now, we need to have a quick word about leaders here, but it's honestly exactly what we saw before. If we take Luke Skywalker as an example, you've got your action you can use on the undeployed side, which you can just sit there using the whole game. You've got your epic action if you control 6 or more resources, flip him and deploy him. And then you're a unit like any other. Couple of things to note is that when a leader deploys, they deploy ready, so you can attack straight away, which is a very, very big deal. But other than that, they're a general unit. The only difference is when they're defeated, they return to the base exhausted. You cannot use your epic action a second time. That is very important. So you can get your leader out as a unit, but only once per game. Once it's defeated, you lose it, ladies and gentlemen. It's done. And then you get to your regroup phase, which honestly is like in a lot of games. You draw 2 cards. You can put a resource card down. Remember, resources are what you use to pay for your cards. You get an extra one during the regroup phase. You ready all your cards, and then you go again. Regroup is an excellent phrase for it. Draw 2, put a resource down, ready your cards, and around we go, ladies and gentlemen. Around and round we go. This seems fun. One really cool little rule here, which is very, very important, is in terms of running out of cards in your deck. Most card games, when you run out of cards in your deck, you lose. Not the case here. When you run out of cards in your deck, you take 3 damage every time you would draw a card. Yes, that means if you would draw 2 cards, you take 6 damage. That's 10% of your base's life every time you would draw a card. You ain't gonna last very long here, but you will at least stay in the game for a little while, and I think that's awesome. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is Star Wars Unlimited. I think this sounds like a very fun game. I love the back and forth aspect of every round. There's a lot I like about here. I'm looking forward to playing it, but I want to hear from you guys. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Star Wars Unlimited and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far, the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.